Yesterday I was at a Chaayos in Nehru Place, and while we were paying for the tea that we had ordered, suddenly I noticed that on the screen in front of me there was like I could see my own face. Effectively, Chaayos, it seemed, has rolled out a facial recognition system that is recording people's facial information, their biometric information for their loyalty program. Now, the way Chaayos is marketing it, and we saw a following screen when we refused the facial recognition, was that no OTPs. So it seemed that the OTP mechanism by itself is cumbersome for people to sign into the loyalty program. And I mean, I love Chaayos, but I think it's very, very dangerous, this facial recognition system that they're launching and that they're rolling out. Now, we saw tweets also when I checked later, and I took a video going back to the screen, and I took a video of how the process works, which you can see on MediaNama's YouTube account. Effectively, Chaayos does, the cashier can actually skip that facial recognition screen if he wants, because when I went to shoot the video of this happening, we ordered tea again just to shoot it. Basically, he saw I was taking a video and he skipped it very quickly. But the customer really doesn't have a choice. If a cashier wants to prevent you from, wants to make sure that you use the facial recognition system only, then you have to. Now, here's why this is problematic. Chai Point has also launched it, so this is not just about Chaayos, but because I've experienced it with Chaayos, I'm going to use that as an example. Number one, my primary issue with this is that it is unnecessary. It is disproportionate to the service being rendered. Can Chaayos not serve us tea without collecting our facial information? Can we not have alternatives to facial recognition that are not so intrusive? Remember that your facial information is permanent. It's like having something that is both a permanent username and a password. And so the risks contained here are much greater. We've already been forced to give some of our data to Aadhaar, and that the state has forced us to do. And now we're being forced to do it for a loyalty program for a tea service. It doesn't make sense. It is unnecessarily intrusive. And this is all sensitive personal information. Number two is about informed consent. I might know about facial recognition systems because we here at MediaNama track them all the time, but most people don't necessarily understand the risks that are contained. So if you are giving your consent, if you're clicking that start button and starting the facial recognition for Chaayos, you don't necessarily understand what Chaayos is going to use this information for. You haven't read the terms and conditions. They don't display specific terms and conditions for you to go through. And even then, there can be like I agree button over there, which again means nothing because you don't necessarily know what Chaayos is going to use it for. You don't understand the risks of giving this data to Chaayos. Most people that go and have tea that don't think about these things. So if we don't understand the risks, then the risks are all ours and the rewards are all of Chaayos. Chaayos can use this information in whichever they want, and their terms and conditions can allow them to give this data to third parties. And I went through Chaayos' terms and conditions for the loyalty programs, and it says that customers who use the loyalty program authorize Sunshine Tea House, which I'm assuming is Chaayos, to use the customer's information for offering products and services, including from its associate partners unless specified otherwise. So effectively the risks are all ours if you're going to Chaayos, and the rewards are all of Chaayos. There is no control that we have over how Chaayos will use this data. There is no means of deleting this data. Chaayos doesn't talk about what it is going to do to protect this data. In fact, in the terms and conditions, it says it's committed to protecting the customer's privacy, but it does not guarantee the same. And for me, this is the line that should go on a t-shirt. It says the customer should not expect that the customer's personal information should always remain private. So again, risk is all ours if we're giving this information to Chaayos, and it's not theirs at all. And it says that the customer should assume all responsibility and risk for the usage of this program. Where also the other part is that this is normalizing facial recognition. We've seen instances and which we've written about in MediaNama of people, of police officers stopping people on the street and doing their facial scan. We have seen airports installing facial recognition software. So, I mean, if you look at countries, if you look at, for example, California, if you look at San Francisco, it has banned facial recognition systems. That it might be kosher in China, and people might be using facial recognition everywhere, but this is very risky personal information. What Chaayos is ending up doing is that it's normalizing facial recognition systems. Like if you remember what happened during demonetization, people were saying, oh, you can stand in line for a concert, but you can't stand in line for national interest. In the same way, you'll have facial recognition systems everywhere. You'll have CCTV cameras doing facial recognition. And then if you contest it as being an invasion of privacy, they'll say, oh, you can give facial recognition to Chaayos, but you can't do it for national security. We shouldn't be normalizing collection of this information. In fact, the government, through laws, can get access to Chaayos's facial recognition data also if it passes such laws. Chaayos's terms and conditions say that the customer authorizes Sunshine Tea House to disclose their information to the government authorities or to competent authorities or to credit bureaus for offering under obligations of applicable laws and regulations. So you can have laws that can take your facial data from private parties like Chaayos. There is of course a NAT grid which is being set up, which connects public and private data sources, and the initial plan was to take information from IRCTC, airlines. Effectively, under NAT grid, the government could also collect data from Chaayos. And facial recognition data is very, very powerful. So we need to be very conscious about how this is being used. This is effectively what it means is a privatization of surveillance, and this is an incentive structure that exists for the government to get this data from third parties that are collecting this data. Now, one question that I would probably get is, but Apple also, but your handset manufacturers also do facial recognition. Apple's terms and conditions and the way they approach facial recognition, from what I've heard, is that the facial recognition happens only on the device. Apple does not store that information. It compares your data on the device with your data here. In case of Chaayos, there's no information that they're collecting. They're comparing your facial information with all the data that they have on facial information, and then they're identifying that it's you who it is. And so therefore, there is a risk of compromise of that data. My request to Chaayos would be to shut this down. My request to Chai Point would be to shut this down. Customers should oppose such measures that are normalizing collection of this very sensitive personal information. I'm opposing it, and so should you.